What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the framework, another episode of The Lion and the Physique. And with me, as always, Todd Lyons. What's up, brother?
What's up, Ryan? How's it going?
It's going, man. As I said, face is filling out. Tan is actually starting to fade, so I know you're not going to the tanning booth as much. So what's going on, man?
Not much. Just thinking about things lately. A lot of it is it's been on my mind is the do's and don'ts of what to do in natural bodybuilding. And as you can see, that's one of the do's that you do is that when you come out of prep, you start to go back to a more quote unquote normal lifestyle. You have to let your body come back to normal. And, whether that's gaining some fat, maybe not tanning as much. As you can see, I'm becoming more lighter, things of that nature, because I see people fall into these pitfalls when they come out of shows. They can't get out of prep mode. Like, I've seen people get eternally stuck in it where they're constantly dieting way too much for way too long, and their body's starting to get wrecked from it, and they still can't get out of it because they have this psychological need to want to stay cut, which is very hard to do year in and year out. Or they go the opposite route and they just totally let loose after a show and they totally blow up and they throw everything out the window, and then they go to the doctor and their blood work's horrendous because you just basically put on all this extra weight. So you're putting all the pressure on your heart, your lungs, the whole 9 yards, your cholesterol shooting up through the roof, triglycerides are skyrocketing, all these bad mistakes. So that's been on my mind lately. I don't know what's some of your experiences with, like, do's and don'ts in bodybuilding that natty people make, or stuff you see online. It's just like, what are you people thinking?
I think we can get a little more granular. For
Um,
example, I think one thing I see is, I mean, obviously there's major, or people have this expectation that, like with contest prep, right? Let's
mhm.
start there and then we'll move to off-season stuff. So you're 4 weeks into a prep, your weight's going down, maybe a quarter of a pound, half a pound a week. And they're thinking, man, it needs to be more, right? I should be losing 2 to 3 pounds a week. And, they're doing cardio at, maybe a light walk on the treadmill, 40 minutes a day, once a day for 4 days, right? Now they're like, I need to be doing an hour to 90 minutes,
Mm,
full throttle, 7 days a week. And it's like, whoa, like that's not going to get you ready any sooner, right? I always use the analogy, it's like cooking a burger, right? Just because you turn the heat really high doesn't mean it's going to cook faster. You're just going to burn it, right? It's not going
mm,
to taste any better because you're trying to rush a 6 minute process to a 2 minute process.
right.
Um, but also, playing devil's advocate, you can't do what you think you can do in 4 weeks, right? Like if you're really
Mm,
out of shape and you're like, I'm going to take it easy, I don't want to really drop too much weight, I want to maintain this full, big look that I only see after about 6 meals a day and post training and after a Big Mac and this, that, and like I feel nice and full and hard in my gym pictures with the nice lighting and with my shorts still on. And there's a real fine line, and I think one of the biggest do's and don'ts is don't try to rush it, right? Don't try to go from 2,500 calories a day to 1,200 calories a day. Like,
mm,
taper yourself down, trust the process, give yourself, and we've beat this like a dead horse, it shouldn't take you 4 weeks. And to your point, it shouldn't take you 4 weeks to prep for a show. If you're coming out of a show and you're like, I don't want to get too big because I want to compete again in 8 months. So I'm just going to look like this for 8 months and then step on stage again. Are you crazy? You need to do some type of rebound. You need to up your calories, up your training intensity, maybe even remove a day from your training, your training process and what your split currently is. There's so many small variables that if you start abusing them to kind of rush through,
mhm.
dude, you're gonna hurt yourself. And then food. I mean, I think it comes down to food and changing your diet last minute. What about you?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what you said, I kind of learned this the hard way too. So when you compete, especially as a natural like we are, it's really hard on the body to just do a show. And I see there's people that do one show and that's it. I'm good. I don't need to ever do a show again. And then you get the other people who get bit by the bug and they're addicted to it. and they constantly do shows. Like they're just always in prep mode. They go into off season for a couple months, then they quickly switch over, and it's like, all right, I got to cut again, and you never get a chance to really build onto your frame. And there's a lot of people that I've seen that just are addicted to bodybuilding. Like they just have to compete like all the time and never give their bodies a break. And it's just like you gotta relax. Like you're not unnatural. You're not having these extra things to help you out. You need to actually have time to recover to get your hormones back into normal shape. And that takes probably a few months after a show. From studies I've been looking at, both your testosterone, thyroid, and other hormones and systems in your body to get back to normal again. So once you get that to normal, then and only then are you then able to go in the process where you're now ready to start building on muscle if you're giving enough supplies and you're training with enough intensity to make that happen. And a lot of these natty guys I just see go in and out, and they just stay in that mode. Also, too, they again dieting. We're just mentioning about food and stuff. Dieting way too hard for way too long is it's challenging on the body, and your body's going to fight you on it. Like, you and me both know what it's like to be awake at before a show a couple weeks out, and you can't sleep at night because you're just so depleted. You wake up at 3, 4 in the morning. It's like, well, I guess the day's starting today right now, so I guess I'll go do something. And
That's
it's
happened to
crazy.
me now. I'm kind of in that.
Yeah.
I'm tracking my sleep and stuff with my Apple Watch, and I add it all to my check-in form when I talk to my coach, and it's like, man, there's always one day a week where it's like 8 hours, 7 hours and 45 minutes, 8.5 hours,
Mm-hmm.
4 hours and 15 minutes, and there's like that one day where it's like just dog shit sleep, and I'm like trying to really like from an analytical perspective, like really pick it apart. It's like, okay, it's usually the day after a leg day.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually after 2 to 3 days of consistent training. It's never around a high calorie day. So, I mean, there's little things like, so to me, looking at my sleep and, why I'm off on certain days and stuff, and why, like, what is depleting me is like, man, I'm blasting my legs harder than
Mm-hmm.
anything else that I'm blasting. Not because I think it, but because the data is physically showing me, like, hey, you're running yourself into the ground, especially after a leg day.
Well, a problem I've seen, that's another problem I just realized too, is that a lot of natural people, when they're especially going to do a show, they're in their prep mode, will train way too much for what the body is able to handle. And I always used to tell people too, when I was coaching and personal training, was that, when it comes to fitness, you have to be able to do the work. One, can you do the work? But two, if you can do the work, can your body recover from it? And that's what separates, average from like awesome, is someone who can do both. They can hit it hard and recover. And a lot of people, it takes a little bit of trial and error to figure it out. Now, when you're depleting yourself down to these low levels, you're not going to have the energy and the resources in the tank to be able to continue what you have been doing before. Things like cortisol spike through the roof when you're that depleted and you're not giving it enough of the stuff it's looking for, which force you to wake up, and it's like, okay, I need to get some supplies in me because my body's telling me to, because we did all this work and we didn't really give enough supplies to work with. So what do we do? So that's a big one I noticed, is doing the work, but also recovering and also giving yourself enough rest time too as well. And as you see, people may not realize it, but you have proof and data, which is pretty awesome because most people don't track that. And it's like, oh shoot, when I do my leg days, I'm taxed. Like here's the numbers here. I'm spent. I gotta recover a bit more, maybe pull back just a little bit on my leg day, and I'll be fine with my sleep cycle.
Yeah, you made a good point there about recovery. That, in my opinion, is the number one separation of an enhanced bodybuilder versus a natural bodybuilder. They have the additional tools and supplies to recover quicker, right? So those 5 to 6 days of training might be something that their body can manage. Maybe they can train 4 days in a row. A natural bodybuilder cannot train 6 days consecutive and recover or perform at the same level, right? So if you're doing, let's say, push pull legs and then a day off, and then push pull legs and a day off, which is a split that I've used in the past,
Mm-hmm.
from a recovery perspective, from a training, like an output, like, all that stuff was very high during that. Whereas in an off season, you're eating like shit. You have a few more cheat meals. Like, yeah, I might throw an arm day in there, right? After that one leg day before an off day, or maybe I do push pull legs and then I do another pull and then I take, like you can really play with the amount of time that you train, how long you're in the gym, how many days consecutively. Now I'm a big caveat for what takes you to the dance is how you should train. This is your split for 6 to 9 to 12 months. That's what you ride it out with, right? When contest prep starts, you really shouldn't change that up. And like you said, from a data perspective, you're able to track all that stuff. Here's how I was training at 180 pounds. Here's how I'm training at 205 pounds, right? Here are the reps I'm able to do versus the weight. Here's my output, so on and so forth. But you're right, man. Like if I was training 6 days a week, every Friday or whatever day my check-ins were, I would start to notice like, man, I'm flat, but I'm also not looking as round. Maybe I'm really smashing it in the legs, and I'm like, man, like I'm quote unquote, and this I'm sure is a world renowned issue with natural bodybuilders. Just I'm training 6 days a week. I'm burning so many calories. Why am I still bloated in the morning? Why when I step on the scale every week is it only half a pound down when I should be 2 to 3 pounds? It's like, no, your body is trying to hold on to every drop of water, every calorie, every grain of rice because it's so desperate. And your stomach essentially is eating itself because you're adding those extra training days in and not recovering. And like you said, your body is trying to balance out all these hormones and it's in fight or flight mode. And that is why you see a lot of natural athletes at a higher level, the ones placing, 1 to 3, are there on the show day sitting in the back with their feet up. Their eyes are closed. Like they're literally just sitting there like a zombie waiting to get on stage because they don't have, aside from food and sleep, they don't have the tools to recover the body as an enhanced athlete would.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, it's what makes it a little bit challenging for our area to be able to do this and everything, and especially age plays a role factor in it, genetics plays a role factor in it, a whole other sorts of array of things can play a factor in it. So like when you don't have those enhancements, I mean, it's really, really the margin of error that you can make getting up to a show day is so small compared to theirs, where they can make some changes pretty quickly just by throwing a few things into the stew and getting them to sleep or getting a little more size or getting them to not retain as much fluid in the ab area or leg areas and stuff. Whereas we have to just kind of rely on what we've been doing with food and sleep and whatnot. And the few supplements we're allowed to take.
Yeah. I mean, I had mentioned, and you had mentioned a few times too about food and recovery and stuff. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make, and I've made in the past as well, is morning of the show. And I made the reference of like what takes you to the dance, right? The morning of the show, making a diet change. What are we doing? Right? Like every morning for the entirety of 14 to 18 to 20 weeks, you've had, let's say, a cream of rice, 70 grams of blueberries and natural peanut butter, right? Now the day of the show, you're going to have 8 ounces of chicken, 120 grams of rice, and a little bit of olive oil. Well, as a natural athlete, I haven't trained my body to digest this particular meal at this particular time for 4 to 5 months. And now your water retention may be different. Your, the place in which you hold the food may be different. Your digestion is going to be slower. You may need more water. You may need less water. You just don't know. Now, granted, that is bodybuilding, right? A lot of guys are going to eat rice cakes with honey and sea salt that may not have ate that throughout their prep. That's normal. But to adjust an entire meal on the day of the show, I'm not a coach, but just from personal experience, hasn't really worked for me in the past. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody has recommended like, hey, do something that you haven't done or that's been wildly off plan to this point, that maybe it did work for you, or maybe this was probably a mistake?
I can say specifics without saying names, but there's a show I did where the day before we decided to experiment. I'm trying to think in my head here. The day before we were trying to experiment. So I had to go to a McDonald's, which I hadn't been eating, and I had to buy 3 Egg McMuffins and 3 hash browns, and I had to consume those for breakfast on the day that I was going to go check in and everything. So I did that. And as the day went on, I didn't feel that great, but I was also told at nighttime to, hey, have a burger with fries at night and a piece of chocolate cake before you go to bed. So, needless to say, the next day I woke up and my body was retaining everything. And when it came to the show, I was so disappointed because I was totally washed out on stage. There was not much definition to me. My body was in bloat. There was nothing I could do from a natural point of view to dump all this extra fluid retention that my body was holding on to. And needless to say, I basically wasted the day. It was a waste. That whole prep into that show was a complete waste of time and everything and money and effort. So yeah, lesson learned. Don't ever do that again. Stick to what you've been doing. Stick to the basics. Don't try to throw anything in that's too crazy or too different than like what you're doing. If you use this potato brand, maybe use this other potato brand, but don't go ahead and be like, okay, I've always done this potato brand and I'm going to go grab French fries or something like that. Like, or, let me go grab this whole thing of like extra pasta or whatever when I've never done that in months. Like, why would you even tempt it? Like, it's just wait till after the show to eat that stuff.
Now, one thing that we can definitely agree on is if you are not conditioned enough,
Mm-hmm.
if you are 24 to 48 hours out from this show, you're determined on stepping on this stage, and you just know that you're off, right? This isn't your best. You're at like 60, 70%. That burger is probably going to fuck you up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're at 95 to 99% shredded to the gills, that burger is going to fill you up. It is going to do all the stuff that the social media gurus and the top-notch Mr. Olympia coaches that say, hey, eat a burger and fries the night before. That's going to work. We want to make that point clear. If you are as conditioned as if you are a 99% there and
Mm-hmm.
you do make a slight change to fill back up, that's going to work for you. No question.
Right.
You and I competed at the same show. And for example, the morning of the show, you and I had muffins. I think it was like we had split like a chocolate chip muffin.
Yep.
And we went out some of our favorite stage shots, nice and full. We were baby sipping water throughout the day, and I think that was one of our best showings.
Definitely.
And you'd think like, oh, muffin's totally going to screw you up. Well, I've woken up the morning of shows and done chicken and rice and was a wash. That was my waste of a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you are as hard as nails and to the best of your ability, those foods should not affect you that much. It shouldn't, if you spill over, it's probably, there's probably other variables there you probably weren't ready to begin with. If you're dehydrating yourself and you refuse to take a sip of water backstage, you're probably already holding water as it is. There's going to be variables there. But the whole point of a prep is to learn what works and what doesn't work for your body, right? That's why it's, hey, you use jasmine rice at 100 grams for meal 3 for 6 weeks. Let's cut that down to 70 and see if we can't pull some of that out. Let's switch from rice to a potato, see if we can't dry you out a little bit the last 3 to 4 weeks. All those things should be playing a role. Those are all hard variables. But I think one point that we can both agree on is if you're not ready for that particular show,
mm-hmm.
and that burger that should be plain burger with or without cheese, right? I mean, you see these people hitting the drive-through and getting their Big Macs and fries and their apple pies and their McFlurries and stuff and going, man, I woke up as like a fat fuck. I couldn't, my feet were swollen. I didn't have, it's like, well, your coach told you to have a burger and you went to town at the drive-through. You see that constantly. So to play devil's advocate or, for yourself, was there ever a time like similar to our muffin story where, hey, you did something the day of the show that maybe I don't know if this doesn't really feel right. And you were like, fuck, like this might be something that I have to integrate, moving forward.
It probably would have been after that. My lesson learned was to figure out which foods I'm the least sensitive to and just stick with them. Um, and just stay with those meals and don't go to cheat meals or anything like that, especially into the show. Because for me, I do better with less than I do with more. And if I have too much, as I found out, I just wash out and everything. And some people could chalk that up to, if you wash out that easily, then maybe you're not lean enough, and that's fine. But you don't want to be a skeleton on stage in front of everybody because you won't get rewarded for that. I've been living proof of that. If you're up there leaner than anything, you won't get rewarded in your category for that, which would be nice, but that's not how they do it. So for me, it was learning to stick with my basics and just kind of play with them just a little bit, just vary the amounts of how much I consume with them. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but just sticking with the same artillery that I've been using up until that point. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. You have to, if you've done this diet, and now this is the first prep where I've ever kind of delayed those refeeds and those cheat meals, whatever you want to call them, right? So
Mm.
for the most part, in the kind of in the do's and don'ts, right? I can't say this for sure as a do or a don't. I've only seen that it's worked for me, right? Is in past preps, it was all right, I'm 16 weeks out. I'm going to do a steak and potato every Friday night for the first couple weeks just to keep my head right, just to make the process easier. And then, maybe you go 2 or 3 weeks without a refeed. Then maybe you go 4 weeks and now you're coming up on the show. So you have like a burger and fries. Like in this contest prep, there's none of that, right? We're trying to get down, we're trying to suck down, pull down as much as we can. Right now, I'm dropping like 1.5 to 2 pounds a week, which is awesome. I'm nice and full in my check-in photos, and the analysts are there. And I know, and it's helping me from a mental perspective, like we're gonna fill up soon, right? Like there's gonna come that Friday where they go, hey, throw a burger. And they're like, to me, it's actually been better for me to hold off on these refeeds
Mm-hmm.
until it's like, hey, you know what? I'm almost there, right? Like I'm as ready at 6 weeks as I should be, so I can throw this in, or I'm as ready at 3 weeks as I should be, so we can add this in, because we don't want it, like to your point, we don't want to look like a skeleton up there, and so, and it just brings us back to if you're as ready as you can be 48, 72 hours before that show, the burger's not going to affect you. It shouldn't affect you that much, right? Maybe you have the muff in the morning of the show. You probably shouldn't spill over or hold water unless you're already holding water and your conditioning isn't there. So, I mean, there's plenty of do's and don'ts out there that, I mean, we're not touching on now, but as a natural athlete versus an enhanced athlete, don't train 6, 7 days a week because you think you're burning more calories, which you are, but your body is definitely being affected in more ways than one. Coming out of a show, don't say I'm just going to go back to eating the way I was, both from a contest perspective or eating like you're going to the electric chair. I mean, you hear so many people's like, yeah, I'm coming out of the show and I'm 3 pounds up, I'm 5 pounds up, I'm 10 pounds up. And now they're like, hey, this is the best I've ever looked 3 months post show. There's other people that go right back to eating garbage and trash. And well, I'm getting 5 meals in a day. And it's like, man, 6 weeks post show, like my feet hurt. Like I'm fat in the face. I'm getting chest pains. Like that's a total don't. Like take what you did on contest prep,
Mm-hmm.
add a few more calories here or there. If you were doing 100 grams of potatoes, do 200. If you're doing 200 grams of rice, maybe do 350. Like just, you got small changes, right? I was a 88 Mike when I was in the service for the first half of my Army career, and driving the trucks, right? It was always, when you're backing up, or it's always small adjustments. Small adjustments are going to get you to where you need to be. Once you start doing wild things, you're totally going to throw yourself off. And what could have been, one meal to kind of reel you back in, now might take a couple days. Now it might take a few cardio sessions. Now you might think training 6 days a week is what I needed to do to get there. Well, now we got to cut you down to 4 because you've done too much. And it's really going to affect you in the long term. So, watch what you're eating the morning of the show. Watch how you're eating coming out of the show. Make sure your rest and recovery is there. And if you're not sleeping and your levels are absolutely shot, continue to get blood work as a natural athlete and kind of see where it takes you from there. Any final thoughts, Don?
Yeah, anybody that's looking to get into the world of bodybuilding or is, going through it like we have and is looking for advice or whatever, you guys can always reach out to Ryan or myself online. We're always willing to help people out and give people advice. I mean, I used to get paid to do it all the time. So I'm still certified and everything. So my CSCS and my degree never expires and my personal trainer certs and all that stuff. So any way I can help somebody is like, I'm always willing to, because a lot of this stuff, we got help along the way, but a lot of it you kind of have to figure it on your own. And there's other little things that you kind of learn along the way throughout your life, like in sports or in the military too, as well. We learn little tricks of the trade or whatever that we can put in together into our little recipe to kind of get what we've gotten out of ourselves. So, and anytime someone's in doubt, reach out to one of us. We'll be willing to help and tell you where to go from there.
Yeah, every contest prep, I've taken a little bit of something with me,
Mhm.
whether it be large or small. I've taken bits and pieces, and you know, I thought, just walking on the treadmill at 3 miles an hour at a slight incline 5 days a week was going to get me to where I need to be. Now I'm tracking, calorie output
Mm.
per session. I'm monitoring heart rate per cardio session, and like this form of cardio is something I'll take with me forever.
Mm.
Um, you know, taking over the counter fat burners, what you find at your local vitamin shop or GNC, not really doing that stuff anymore. It's not really gonna put you in the right place. Types of cardio that you're doing, style of training, like these things that I've just taken from every single prep into off seasons, into the following preps, have only made me and Todd, I know yourself, have only
Mm.
made us better bodybuilders show to show.
Mm.
So hey man, I appreciate you as always jumping on. This is episode 8 of the Lion and the Physique, and we are looking forward, of course, to episode 9 and above. So Todd and everybody, thanks for stopping by the framework.
Thanks, Ryan.